Hi, welcome to the Second Rainbow Coalition Reading Group. We are reading The Young Lords by Johanna Fernandez. And today we will be reading chapter 3, starting with the section at, my apologies, Organizing on Behalf of the People, pages 96 to 109. We're going to start with the Second Rainbow Coalition Statement of Unity. Comrade Gabby, you have the mic.
Hell yeah. Let me screen share it so y'all can see it. And thankfully now I know how to put it full screen. so y'all won't have to read it really tiny.
Awesome sauce. I dig that.
All right, can y'all see this?
Yep.
Nice.
Nice and clear.
Okay, nice. I'll be reading the Statement of Unity preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the ego sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions, and robbing them of their right of self-determination. As European Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world, of every ethnicity and nationality, face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from the oppression of the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, and Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton, of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a quote-unquote race struggle. He said that it's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition, therefore the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule and subsequently used the entire oppressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model of the United Front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and class interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the coalition, New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, NASO, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, and American Indian Movement, Northeast Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the statement of unity.
Thank you, comrade.
Oh yeah.
I will go ahead and screen share the book here. All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
I might zoom in a little more. Is that a little better?
Yep.
Oh,
perfect.
Yet. My apologies, I did it again. I like to scroll a little bit to bring it back up to the top of the page and jump to 5 pages. Things really touchy. There we go. All right.
So how many pages do we have to read?
Shoot. Let me look at the schedule again. It's just this section, 96 to 109. So got 14 pages and 7 people here. So does everybody here want to take a turn reading? If so, we can divvy it up on like 2 pages each.
I'll
If
gladly
not everyone
read.
wants to take a turn, we can just go accordingly.
I'm available.
What's that?
I'm available to read.
I'm available too.
Me too.
Okay.
I'm unavailable to read at the moment. I gotta watch this dog.
Okay. So that's what, 5 of us?
Or I'll read last.
Who said that?
Sean,
Oh, okay.
I'll
And
read
Sister
last. That's
You are
fine.
down to read. Just
Mr.
read. Yeah.
Yessie also says she's available to read also.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll do 2 pages apiece. I guess just, like ballpark it since, the paragraphs don't always end at the bottom of the page and stuff. Wrap it up at the end of that paragraph where it continues at the top of the next page and we can go from there. All right, I guess I'll start. Organizing on behalf of the people. As the group continued its street conversations with the people of East Harlem, its members found the answers they were searching for. In an interview conducted by young Lord Iris Morales, the director of a 1995 PBS film on the Young Lords, Luciano explains humorously, so we're on 110th Street and we actually asked the people, what do you think you need? What do you need? Is it housing? Is it police brutality? And they said, muchacho, dejate de todo eso, la basura, which means, listen, kid, forget about it. It's the garbage. And I thought, my God, all this romance, all this ideology to pick up the garbage, but that's what they wanted. A special series on blight in East Harlem, published in the New York Daily News, corroborated the residents' stories. It described as a horror the tons of rotting garbage and structural abandonment that characterized the 40 square block zone of East Harlem, where the Young Lords were most active. According to the journalist, the 160 streets covered by the survey were rarely swept, had only 6 garbage receptacles, and had uncollected garbage lingering. And scrolling, here's a photo. You know, I guess I should have scrolled through this too to see how many pages they're taking up photos. For days and weeks at a time. A major factor in the web of social services fueling this epic garbage accumulation was the neighborhood's population density and housing crisis. East Harlem was 50% more densely populated than other neighborhoods in Manhattan. The problem was even more acute block by block. Since East Harlem had a disproportionate share of the city's condemned housing units, over 90% of its residents were crammed into 60% of the neighborhood's residential areas, the majority of which housed dilapidated tenements that failed to meet legal standards set by the New York State Housing Act of 1901. In addition to yielding higher concentrations of household waste, East Harlem's built environment was itself littered with industrial scale waste that included 107 abandoned buildings and 55 empty lots in a 160 street radius. Holy fuck. These functioned as freelance dumping grounds and rat-infested repositories for all manner of refuse, from rotting carcasses of animals to bicycles, boilers, washing machines, furniture, metal drums, and other discarded bulk. In the East Harlem of the 1960s, it was not uncommon for pedestrian traffic to be obstructed by industrial scale garbage pouring out of buildings and empty lots, with passersby assailed by fetid odors, especially potent in the summer months. David Perez, a founding member of the Young Lords organization, YLO, who relocated from New York from Chicago, observed years later, until I came to New York, I had never seen so much garbage and dirt in the streets. Not that Chicago was a clean place, but the garbage was not piled up on the front stoop where people sat during the hot weather. New Yorkers had long identified the city's dirty streets and its inadequate sanitation system as a top problem. When the Daily News opened up its phone lines with the promise of forwarding callers' sanitation concerns to the proper city officers, thousands overwhelmed its lines with the same refrain. It's about time somebody tried to do something about this mess. Before long, a new cast of characters heeded the call. In July 1969, approximately 35 young lords, likely accompanied by a smattering of curious neighbors, walked into the local sanitation depot on 108th Street. They asked if they could register a complaint. They also asked for brooms and garbage bags. Some of those present had probably already heard that the city was distributing a limited number of strong fire and waterproof green plastic bags, an experiment begun by the mayor's office in partnership with the Ethel Corporation as one of a series of solutions to the scarcity of garbage cans in the city. The Young Lords claimed they were met with intransigence and racial slurs by the sanitation depot staff, who denied them brooms and bags. The group left, likely hurling a few slurs of their own. Chances are the staff dismissed the group as a bunch of neighborhood rabble-rousers. They likely had no idea what the failure to give out a few garbage bags would spawn. Over the course of 3 Sunday mornings, while many East Harlem residents were preparing for church, the Young Lords, armed with brooms, pilfered from the sanitation depot and requested from neighborhood bodegas and supermarkets, swept sections of the neighborhood, and piled the refuse on the sidewalk. In an interview with Pacifica Radio, Felipe Luciano described the first stage of the garbage offensive. Believe it or not, we were like goody-goodies, sweeping the streets all day on what we called Junkies Row on 110th Street. Sweeping streets alone was not going to sustain the campaign or its membership for long. In a neighborhood where more than 100,000 densely populated residents were producing garbage around the clock, the efforts of the Young Lords, like those of Sisyphus, seemed futile. And some within the group held quiet reservations. Carting garbage was a far cry from the work they imagined their self-professed revolutionary organization would be doing. In response to the challenges before them, the Central Committee, the Young Lords' major leadership body, began to meet regularly, sometimes in closed meetings and sometimes with public input, to assess the work of the organization and identify short and long-term goals. Okay, who wants to read next? You can pick up right there.
I'll read it if it's okay.
That's cool.
Nice. So from there, sorry, let me check. All right. So although not immediately, right?
Yep.
All right. Shit. Although not immediately, shit, my voice. Although not immediately evident to all of their members, the Young Lords' street sweeping and garbage carting allowed the community to get to know them, even as it raised eyebrows. Residents were curious about the purpose of their actions, the meaning of their purple berets, and the message of their button, which featured a fist holding a rifle with the Puerto Rican flag as its background, with the words "I have Puerto Rico in my heart" in Spanish. Passerby asked, "What church are you all with?" or assumed that they were with the mayor's urban action task force. Other more politically discerning residents, residents wondered whether their anti-establishment rhetoric and dress signaled a possible connection with the Black Panthers, whose presence in the city had been seriously thwarted in spring 1969 by a large police roundup that falsely accused 21 Panthers of plotting to blow up government buildings. A fucking course, fucking piece of shit. Getting their hands dirty in the community softened the Young Lords' image and offered an organic entry point that allowed them to engage in political discussions in the process of addressing concrete neighborhood problems. Guzman recalled that the garbage offensive allowed the Young Lords to quote unquote rap with the people of East Harlem about the revolutionary changes going on in society at large, and then to connect those changes with the need to make revolutionary change in the immediate society around them right now. Fucking hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's that's mass flying and survival programs right there. In a way, it was fitting that these young, downwardly mobile Puerto Rican militants, the first in their families to go to college with the expectation that they would become professionals, began with a community service campaign. But even as political rhetoric and dress disavowed the traditional markers of success, they presented their newfound political theories in the cultural language of Puerto Rican migrants. Unlike their white counterparts in the new left, most members of the Young Lords were differential. Yep, sorry, differential to small town traditional Puerto Rican values, with their respect for elders and a deep sense of obligation to family and community. This particular feature of the Young Lords, Young Lords' elan, charmed community residents and contributed to their success. The experience also proved cathartic for the Young Lords, as Guzman explains, "quote unquote, it was like rediscovering where your parents had come from, rediscovering your childhood. As residents got to know them, some participated in their street sweeping activities." Yep, observation, participation. And the Young Lords gained members in the ones and twos. Contrary to popular representation of 1960s radicals as one-dimensional, gun-wielding toughs, the Young Lords began to implement the practices and ideas of that others in the New Left had made dominant over the course of the 1960s. The political work included both community committing zealously to service in poor communities and supporting the idea of armed self-defense against racist violence, especially at the hands of the police. Best exemplified by the Black Panthers breakfast program for poor children, urban radicals adopted the service model of activism made dominant by anti-poverty programs, which fit with the conception of the revolutionary with the revolutionary as a self-sacrificing quote-unquote servant of the people advanced by Mao Zedong and Che Guevara. Because these activities were undertaken as part of a larger political project, their impact was qualitatively enlarged. As hundreds of young people of color, the most stigmatized population in U.S. society, began to join revolutionary organizations inside the world's major power, the humanistic program simultaneously subverted their domination, their demonization in the mainstream, and became a potent symbol of radical resistance the world over. Back in East Harlem, the Young Lords argued that the absence of routine garbage collection in the city harmed poor people of color disproportionately, and that the particular manifestation of the situation crisis in neighborhoods like East Harlem was fueled by racism against Puerto Ricans. Yep. Though perhaps abstract to some, their assessment was not sorry, I lost where I was not off the mark. The changes that griped northern cities during the post-war period produced greater structural inequality. Industrial decline and the mass exodus of working and middle-class white Americans to the suburbs had eroded New York's tax base dramatically and produced a fiscal crisis. Am I pronouncing that right? Fiscal. Fiscal, sorry, a fiscal crisis. By the late 1960s, New York's disproportionately black and brown residents lived in urban apartheid, beleaguered by chronic unemployment, acute housing shortages, a disfigured physical landscape, impoverished schools, inadequate health and sanitation systems, and greater pollution. Yep, that's fucking redlining right there. The New York City Department of Sanitation's own annual report for 1971 identified 1969, the year that the Young Lords launched their protest, as a particularly bad year for garbage collection, with the department meeting only 77%. Where was I? As a particularly bad year for garbage collection, with the department meeting only 77% of its refuse collection schedule on any given day. The refuse and industrial waste was that was popping up across the city was that of a society whose capacity for garbage removal had not kept up with the consumption patterns. Established in a different epoch, the city's sanitation equipment, administrative infrastructure, and protocols were overwhelmed by the scale of detritus.
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 It's dead plant material.
Gotcha. Scale of detritus of the new consumer society. For example, the city had not designed rules of disposal for abandoned cars, which often wound up in neighborhoods like East Harlem. These industrial carcasses, quote unquote, stripped of wheels and engines, littered city blocks like giant dead bugs, and lured children and teenagers into dangerous play environments. As the Young Lords' campaign picked up steam, its muckraking exposed how the city's extreme neglect produced environmental health hazards that disproportionately harm poor Puerto Rican and Black American neighborhoods with no resources to hire private garbage carting services. When sanitation workers finally showed up, sorry, what? Oh, right, right.
Oh, I just got to interrupt here because It's been a couple of pages, so I wanted to give somebody else a turn to read too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Who wants to read next?
We
Picking up
seen,
where you
Sean wrote
we
in the
we
chat
seen
that he
Sister Yessie was available and also Sean, but whoever is,
Sean wrote in the chat that he can go next because he needed a break. He's available.
yes.
When sanitation workers showed up in East Harlem, they dumped half the garbage into trucks and, according to the young lords, left the other half strewn in the streets, a practice that residents knew too well, and which the young lords attributed to the sanitation department's disdain for the people of East Harlem, or El Barrio, as its Spanish-speaking residents called it. There was likely a lot of truth in this observation. New York's 10,000 sanitation workers, workers were part of an ethnically exclusive large Italian American union. A year earlier, they went on strike despite generous contract terms in comparison to those of other city unions. The sanitation men's walkout was motivated by the rebellious spirit of the late 1960s social movements, but they also seem to have struck against the growing economic insecurity augured by inflation and the changing racial composition of the city's working class. The sanitation workers were angry at the city, angry at the changes in the working conditions, angry at the apparent preference shown the minorities. They felt like second-class citizens, which the term garbage men used to describe them and their work suggested, and wanted to strike almost for catharsis. From their vantage point in the suburbs, East Harlem's structural wolves were barely visible. Up close, the neighborhood was shamefully dirty, a place where residents didn't own their homes or care about their community. As we have seen, suburbanization struggles over school integration and the creation of an independent civilian review board of the police intensified white reaction to the social and economic aspirations of Black Americans and Puerto Ricans in the 1960s, practicing civil disobedience. When the Sunday sweeping activities of the Young Lords failed to elicit the participation of large numbers of people or command the attention of government officials, the YLO decided more drastic action was necessary. Their leverage would be the rubbish itself. There was plenty of it to go around. With the garbage they swept up on a Sunday in July and the piles that had gone uncollected during the week, the Young Lords launched the second phase of their campaign. The day after their rally at Tompkins Square Park on the afternoon of Sunday, July 27, 1969, the Young Lords dumped garbage in the middle of the street on 3rd Avenue at 110th Street. For good measure, they threw in the old mattresses, armchairs, sofas, sinks they found in the neighborhood empty lots. While a group of young lords... Huh?
Sorry, I said that's pretty fucking great.
No, that's why I was
love
laughing. I'm like, hell yeah.
That's a level of petty I can totally get behind.
That's fucking hilarious, bro. I'm like goddamn fine. You don't want to clean our neighborhoods. Let's see how you like it.
Right?
Goddamn.
Okay. While a group of young lords coordinated the unloading of abandoned furniture and garbage into the middle of the street, other members of the group explained the new direction of their protest to the familiar neighborhood faces that gathered to watch and participate in their audacious and visually captivating protest. The group was transitioning from street sweeping, say that 5 times fast, to a form of civil disobedience. The new direction opened up conditions within which residents might take action independently or alongside the Young Lords, or both. It differed markedly from the initial efforts at organizing on behalf of and in service to the people. The question of whether revolutionary change could be achieved through the self-activity of large numbers of people at the bottom of society or through leadership of a politically edified and self-sacrificing minority had been a long-standing debate over the meaning and conception of socialism. It would remain an ongoing theme throughout the life of the organization. The Young Lords threw up garbage barricades to disable traffic on 3rd Avenue, a major neighborhood thoroughfare. Chairman Felipe Luciano explains that at different moments, the great group's lightning-like guerrilla raids blocked northbound and southbound on Lexington and Madison Avenues, and many times on 1st Avenue and between 111th and 109th Street. Initially, they hoped the community residents who had previously seen them sweeping the streets would respond. Indeed, from the start, throngs spontaneously joined in. In an interview from the period, Guzman gave a sense of the numbers of Young Lords and community residents involved in their first actions. We would have 15 lords in the beginning and about 300 people coming in. The crowds gathering around the dumped garbage soon captured the attention of hundreds of neighborhood residents who observed the mayhem from their windows. The group's objective was to create a crisis that would force the city to respond. When the police arrived on scene, the Young Lords, who had meanwhile removed their berets, easily melted into the community, like fish in the sea, avoiding detection. Waiting for a scroll. The Young Lords were applying to an urban landscape methods made famous in Vietnam and elsewhere, where guerrillas seeking decolonization attacked their military targets and sought cover from rural people in the mountains, whom they had hoped to recruit into their nationalist cause. Although the Young Lords used the metaphor of guerrilla warfare, their organizing efforts had more in common with nonviolent civil disobedience than armed insurrection.
Thank you, Comrade. Okay, who wants to read next?
I seen Yessie said she was available, so I think it's her first time here. It'd be nice to hear from her.
Awesome. Go ahead, Yessie. You have the mic.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Okay. As August wore on, bored kids, angry young men, and even a few frustrated grandmas left their apartments to help the Young Lords haul the neighborhood's garbage to exactly those spots where it was not supposed to go. By stopping traffic and creating a gathering point for people, the Young Lords initiative helped build a sense of community where neighbors could vent and engage in shared activity over a common cause. The Young Lords that led the resulting informal street discussions with humor. Since the Department of Sanitation didn't live up to its name, the Young Lords renamed it the Department of Garbage. They also linked the problem of sanitation to broader issues. Their sometimes crass political rhetoric was unequivocal about naming the enemy. Our people will never be completely served until the politicians, businessmen, and pig power is crushed, and all power is returned to the people. To the Young Lords, the indignity of East Harlem's garbage crisis was the disgraceful symbol of the oppression of Puerto Ricans and Black Americans on the mainland and on the island colony. In a press release distribution in one of their later garbage protests, they explained that the problem of sanitation was an extension of many other problems in East Harlem. The average life expectancy of Blacks and Puerto Ricans is 7 years less than for whites. The white dropout earns more than the Puerto Rican high school graduate. 25% of all housing in El Barrio is listed as deteriorated or dilapidated. Average income in East Harlem, where was I? 20%. Average income in East, thank you. Average income in East Harlem per family is less than $4,000, half that of New York. In these impromptu conversations, more young people asked if they could get with the group, and the Young Lords gained a few members at a time, as well as dozens of friendly followers. As protests drew more people, they grew more spectacular. Through word of mouth, the Young Lords put out a call for mass action on August 17th. On that night, as Young Lords assembled the garbage at the intersection of 110th Street and 3rd Avenue, crowds gathered and grew quickly. Some of the onlookers pushed the protest in a new, more flagrant direction. Several men poured gasoline on the refuse heaps and set them aflame. In later recollections, several young lords said that they were not involved in lighting the garbage on fire, but they purposely did not try to stop their neighbors. And when someone planted the Puerto Rican flag atop one of the garbage heaps, the sense of solidarity, pride, and rebellion grew appreciably. These demonstrations had become about much more than garbage. For many residents who participated, they were about sending a message that Puerto Ricans were not pushed around. They were about taking a stand for Puerto Rican dignity in a mainland ghetto. And for the young lords, they were also about trying this experience of degradation to the experience of racism in the U.S. mainland and to the long-standing history of colonial domination of the island. As seen in the 1967 East Harlem riots, the symbolism of the flag emboldened the protesters. That night, the young lords and the growing number of neighborhood supporters managed to block Madison, Lexington, and 3rd Avenues completely. Uptown and downtown traffic was backed up for 30 blocks. The next day, the New York Times reported that angry residents of a 6-block area of East Harlem staged a 2-hour garbage throwing melee. Okay, melee. 3 abandoned automobiles were overturned and burned, blocking intersections, and mounds of burning garbage were heaped up at corners. The protest quickly escalated into what must appear to law enforcement like a riot. Before long, 2 police helicopters hovered in the sky, and heavy police reinforcements were called to the scenes. Protests escalated when the police arrested Idefenso Santiago, a Puerto Rican driver whose car was blocked by the garbage bonfire burning on 111th Street and Lexington Ave. The New York Times reported that the driver was arrested because he was unlicensed. The movement press, however, later held that he was arrested on suspicion of burglary. The throngs of people who looked on likely read the arrest as a form of police clampdown on the garbage protests through repressive retaliation against an innocent bystander and member of the community. The onlookers retaliated. The growing crowd filled the streets with more trash, cars, old refrigerators, and anything else they could find. In a scene often replayed during the decade's numerous riots, the sanitation workers and firemen who were called to the scene were pelted with bottles. If East Harlem residents hated the Department of Sanitation for making a bigger mess of the garbage, they knew that the fire department was among the most stridently discriminatory institutions nationwide, the epitome of a racially exclusive civil service fraternity. In 1963, out of close to 2,500 firefighters in New York City, only 38 were Black Americans and only 1 was Puerto Rican. Amid the melee that was set off by Santiago's arrest, the Young Lords organized a march to the 126th Street police station that drew hundreds as rumors spread through the neighborhood about the arrest. Once there, a delegation of residents met with police officials to demand Santiago's release, while others gathered outside chanting "Viva Puerto Rico," power to the people, and off the pig. Santiago was immediately released with a fine. As soon as the crowd set eyes on him walking out of the precinct, it carried him like a trophy all the way back to his car. That same summer, in June alone, the New York Times reported on 2 different incidents in which throngs of Puerto Rican residents in the Bronx stormed police precincts. In both cases, spontaneous marches to the police station began after failed attempts by individual residents or groups of residents to stop a police arrest in progress. Refusing to succumb to what was surely perceived as abuse of authority or racially motivated harassment by police for minor infractions, angry crowds followed the patrolmen and their... Oh, snap.
Oh, hell yeah. Look at that.
Dang.
Is that the police car?
I'm not sure if that's a police car. I think that's just a regular car.
Youths overturned a car during the first garbage offensive. Hell yeah.
It does not appear to match any of the police cars of the time.
Gotcha.
Prisoner to the station house, where demands for the prisoner's release were accompanied by hurled garbage, bricks, and bottles, and the smashing of police car windows. As the young lords quickly learned, their project would involve disciplining the volatility. Yes, their project would involve disciplining the volatility of a neighborhood recently consumed by riots. Although the young lords tended to celebrate their actions as unique, aggressive interference with police arrest was a common feature of daily life in the late 1960s. These spontaneous expressions of quotidian resistance by people of color had set the stage for the success of the Young Lords campaign. The Young Lords' interventions, however, were different. They offered a political platform within which to organize the rebellious spirit of the ghetto behind isolated outbursts of anger and toward a long-term project for social change fortified by their analysis of the structural roots of poverty, racism, and war. Like El Comite, a racial Puerto Rican group that emerged later, the Young Lords reinvigorated the example of militant community organizing established by the Black Panthers. The very next day, on August 18th, the Young Lords returned to the neighborhood to continue to consolidate relationships with the people with whom they had bonded over the liberation of Idefenso Santiago from the police station. This time they held a rally and an open mic where residents spoke and a number of young lords articulated their aims more explicitly. But passions escalated quickly, and the New York Times again reported that residents of the area around Park Avenue and 110th Street joined in the heaping and burning of garbage at several intersections. Several abandoned cars were overturned and burned, traffic was blocked, and heavy police reinforcements were called to the area to protect sanitation men, who were again called to cart the garbage from the middle of the street. Once the lighting of the fires began, the young lords scrambled to figure out how to respond and how to avoid getting arrested. Their campaign had hit a nerve, and they were connecting deeply with the community's rebellion against the indignity of living in filth. Guzman told the New York Times, "We don't want violence for violence sake, and we don't want to dump garbage in the street. But if we have to go through a mountain of red tape, if there's never any action by the city, then we have no choice." The group conducted its hit-and-run garbage dumping routine from the end of July through the early days of September. Their new bold approach, coupled with the familiarity of a traffic stopping routine in which they engaged almost daily in August '69, set the stage of the inventive militancy that defined the Young Lords during their most productive years. Its chairman summed it up as the deployment of basic techniques of urban guerrilla warfare: flexibility, mobility, surprise, and escape.
Give me just a second to check and see if we are at page 109 yet. Oh, nope, we got a few more pages to go. Okay.
Demands against environmental racism. Tensions were already emerging within the organization about the direction these actions were taking. David Perez, for example, was uncomfortable with the garbage burning. He was concerned about the possible negative impact the arson might have on the community's perception of the Young Lords. But members had set off a process larger than themselves. The garbage offensive was an all-consuming affair, and most members had very little time and opportunity to figure out what they believed philosophically about the turn of events. There was also more dangerous fires that needed to be extinguished. The YLO leadership suspected that they had been infiltrated by police provocateurs.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Yep, provocateurs.
Provocateurs who were pressing the crowd to prematurely cross the Madison Avenue Bridge to the Bronx, where they would be isolated and could be vulnerable. While the young lords were committed to brash militancy, they were not out to incite rioting. A series of demands drafted and printed by the young lords for distribution as their August 18 rally gave a sense of how the group gave definition and concretized the ongoing garbage protest. Read out by Luciano at the rally, the Young Lords' first articulation of formal demands around local grievances was the following.
Thank you, Conrad. Does anybody else want to take a turn?
I can do it.
Right on.
All right. So that the sanitation men come pick up garbage each day, including Sunday, that sidewalks and gutters be kept clean each day, that the city grant a minimum of 10 or more trash cans for every block and 10 brooms for every block association, that the city hire more Puerto Rican and Black workers, that sanitation men who do their job get a salary increase, no more payoffs from the people to the garbage men. From the people, did I say that right? No more payoffs from the people to the garbage men. All right. Moderate for the time left, these demands reflect the spirit and politics that define the early New Left. The demand for the distribution of brooms to block associations held a sense that residents themselves retain a stake in the life of and cleanliness of their neighborhood. An echo of various calls of the period to redefine democracy through active involvement of people in the life of their communities, from the War on Poverty's calls for, quote, maximum feasible participation, and the New Left's, quote unquote, participatory democracy, to the Black Panthers' power to the people. The demand for employment of Puerto Rican and Black American workers were also the spirit of early 1960s battles against job discrimination in New York's building trades. Most impressive was the Young Lords' demand of a higher wage for sanitation workers, as it reflects an attempt to build solidarity, with white workers, in spite of what was already known in movement circles that white workers had mounted resistance to racial integration and to the opening up of union jobs to Puerto Rican and Black Americans. Finally, in a city as densely populated as New York, the group's demand for daily pickup and cleaning by sanitation workers likely made sense to most New Yorkers. But as Sanitation Commissioner Griswold Mueller jokingly remarked a couple of years later, the city's problem with garbage collection was tied to the city's belated turn to technology. Quote, the most innovative thing we've done in waste disposal was to substitute an engine for the mule that used to pull the old trash wagon, unquote. What went unacknowledged, however, was the disproportionate impact of the sanitation crisis on neighborhoods like East Harlem and its Puerto Rican and Black American residents. The Young Lords amplified this message. Absent a systematic and scientific approach to garbage collection, communities of color were vulnerable to racist prejudices of individual sanitation workers and to corruption in services delivery, suggested in the Young Lords' references to payoffs in the last of their demands. Having $5 or $10 in hand was known as the only way to get garbage collected in East Harlem. While the newspapers vaguely acknowledge that the underworld forces have long had a foothold in the private garbage carting industry, the Young Lords were likely the only organizers openly denouncing the notion that public employees should have to be paid twice for doing their job. The Young Lords insisted that the problem of garbage was much bigger and tied to an urban landscape where powerful interests were responsible for disfiguring neighborhoods like East Harlem. A year later, on the anniversary of their offensive, they explained the following, quote, our objective was to move on the government for allowing the garbage to pile up in the first place. By questioning the system's basic level of sanitation, our people would then begin to question drug traffic, urban renewal, sterilization, etc. until the whole corrupt machine would be exposed for the greedy monster it is. Writing years later, Guzman explains that the Young Lords offered an economic and political analysis of the problem of garbage in East Harlem that illuminated the workings of power and its consequences. To them, the issue was not simply about coffee grounds and discarded milk containers. Garbage is also abandoned automobiles and broken appliances like refrigerators. The squalor that surrounds burned out buildings and rubble stone lots, which kids play in because the playgrounds have gone to seed, while rats dance and junkies shoot up. Garbage is refuse dumped into ghetto areas by unscrupulous, often mob-controlled private carting companies who sometimes drop hazardous material and other industrial waste while looking for a short end run. With their assessment of the problem, the Young Lords were becoming a part of a generation of radical activists who erected the analytical building blocks of future movements that would focus on the politics and economics of what has come to be known as quote unquote environmental racism. The Young Lords organizing shows how working and poor people of color entered the period's preliminary conversations on environmental problems. To them, the environmental crisis was profit driven. Its hazards had consequences on human beings, and the indignities it produced in everyday life were felt disproportionately by the people in New York's decaying neighborhoods. The garbage crisis also epitomized all that was wrong with the way Puerto Ricans, the second largest racialized group in New York, were treated in the city. In their estimation, the failure to resolve issues as basic as sanitation was a form of racism, an indication that local government did not view poor people of color as deserving of municipal services. Throughout the summer, the Young Lords were somewhat of a mystery to the press, in part because they had avoided donning their berets at demonstrations. It wasn't until August 18th, New York Times interview with Pablo Aruba Guzman, that mainstream newspapers identified the Young Lords as the spearheads of the quote unquote garbage dumping demonstrations. The New York Times noted that the youth interviewed wore buttons showing a fist holding a rifle and containing the Spanish phrase that translated, "I have Puerto Rico in my heart." But the newspaper's interview with an established anti-poverty leader, Johanna Fernandez of the Betterment Association, raised questions about the group's aims and its criticisms of established anti-poverty groups. Hernandez asked the reporter, "How do we know what they stand for, what their aims are?" It appeared that the Young Lords were already raising eyebrows among some leaders who feared that these upstarts might be gaining ground in their territory. For its part, the police reported that the Young Lords were a new group about which little was known other than that every once in a while they pop up. That's pretty much an understatement. Right.
Still the case. Y'all show up when you're needed. And I like
A little
it.
all right. So although the Young Lords were unknown to some, hundreds of local residents had joined the 6 demonstrations they organized that summer, the most successful of which obstructed traffic for 30 city blocks. During these days, several groups around the city held demonstrations around the same issue, including a group of parents in Brooklyn who protested the infestation of rats in their neighborhood. The protests continued. Wow. Okay, hold on. Let me try that one more time. The protests continued through the early weeks of September, and the incineration of garbage heaps by residents of East Harlem often acted independently of Young Lords and one of Manhattan's major connecting points for commuters, continued to create pressure on the city. At the height of the Young Lords' combined garbage demonstrations, the New York Times reported that, quote, "dirty streets may be the third issue in this year's mayoral campaign, behind the two racial issues. crime and welfare.
Check the check the pages, Sister Zen. Just want to remind you.
Yep, I actually was doing that while Alyssa was reading the last paragraph. And yep, garbage politics from above and below is where we will pick back up on Sunday.
Nice.
So I will stop the screen share and we can dive right into discussion now.
This was awesome. I fucking love this shit.
I do too. It's nice seeing like the roots of the young lords and how it all like snowballed of just, you know, starting with a handful of people going, you know what, we need to fix some shit in our community. Let's do this. And diving right the fuck in.
Right on. I thought I was muted for a second. I'm like, wait, can anyone hear me? But no, yeah. What I'm saying, you know, and as I said before, you know, before you run, you have to walk, and before you walk, you have to crawl. You know, the masses are not just going to engage in revolution, and are not just going to engage in forming a dictatorship of the proletariat if they don't know how it benefits them, if they don't know how what is in it for them, and how it's exactly going to help their situation. You know, you have to struggle alongside the masses and provide for their materialistic needs and their materialistic conditions, and apply your analysis, apply dialectical materialism and Marxism within those materialistic conditions that provide for them, engage in mass line and cultural revolution, and provide what they need. And once they see that the Vanguard Party gives a shit about them, once they see that these organized, once they see that these organizing campaigns work, once they see that things don't have to be this way, that there is something better, then they will adopt and adhere to the ideological and political line of the party. Then they will engage in participating within the revolutionary activities of the party. You know, the whole point is to elevate the masses and meet them where they are at until they are as knowledgeable or even more knowledgeable than us when it comes to theory and praxis and dialectical materialism. You know, and that's what the Young Lords did. That's what the Black Panthers did with their free breakfast program, their free their free clinic. I also believe they ran free educational classes, liberation schools, and so on and so forth. You know, you have to meet the masses where they're at. You have to struggle alongside them and understand their materialistic needs, and gather all the scattered ideas and aspirations of your community and transform them into principled action, into principled class agitation, organizing, and to elevate them so that way you can move past the preliminary stage into new strategic stages in order to move class struggle forward, you know? So yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty fucking cool.
Exactly. Well said. You know, they definitely met the masses where they were at by starting out with what is it that you need? And that is incremental.
Exactly.
Comrade Joe, I see you've got your hand up. Love to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you talk about taking it to the street, I mean, they took it all the way from 109th to 110th, 111th Street. And I particularly haven't been in that neighborhood, but I study history and I study neighborhoods. And that's like, go ahead and block where they can't pass. And now they're going to pay attention. They took it from the side streets and put it on the main street. But I seen Sister Yesenia and Brother Wes joined in today. I believe it's their first time. Maybe we can offer them a chance to introduce themselves to all of us and see what their take is on today's reading.
Right on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Welcome to the table, Wes and Yessie.
Yes, people know me as El Juez, but my name is Ramon. Now, this is I really enjoyed listening to this reading and how powerful the young lords did to get to that point where they had to take matters in their own hands, or how it was mentioned, urban guerrilla warfare, to get these city officials for something as basic as picking up trash, because these neighborhoods were discriminated against. So they took things, matters into their own hands to do that. And I'm thinking, look at that time, with everything that was happening in this country. You know, we had the Vietnam War going on. There was protests behind that. There was different riots in different parts of the country for racial discrimination. And we had all this, everything that was happening, you know, during MLK, you know, Malcolm X and all these other powerful figures who, when all of this was going on. So I really admire what the young lords did, you know, to help their communities, because no one else was doing these city officials, police, fire department, were not doing their job. So they say, hey, man, we're going to have to take matters into our own hands. It's the only way that they would listen. Like somebody said, well, no, it says, these weren't exactly riots, but sometimes it's the only language that they understand when we take matters into our hands and piling up this garbage and trash in certain streets, you know, making it inconvenient for all these other people who didn't have to put up with stuff like that, you know, and then have the audacity to claim that these people don't care, you know, they're just dirty communities and stuff. So that's good, you know, all power to the young lords.
Right on.
Thank you, brother. I not before somebody else steps in, I just wanted to say, Ramon, sister Zen lives very close to you. You live in Tucson, and maybe you guys can all collaborate on events that are happening within your communities for the future. And that's thank you for joining in, comrade. I know Yessie I know she has something to say, so I don't know if we can give the floor to Sister Yessie.
What's going on?
Yo, hey.
Hello? Hello? Okay, is it
Yep,
working?
we hear
Sorry,
you.
my mute wasn't working.
No problem.
Yes, this is my first meeting. I'm Yesenia Valdez from Greeley, Colorado, born and raised. I am currently a pledge for LBB, Los Brown Berets. Joe is my mentor, and what I think about the reading, I mean, it's very eye-opening. It's very powerful. I didn't even know that this had happened before. So I love going to all of the meetings I'm a part of. I love being able to learn more about the history, learn more about the other organizations, because I didn't even know about the Young Lords or any other, or really about AIM. Like, I know that they've been mentioned before in my studies, but I never delved deep into it. So it's just empowering to be able to read this history and learn from it, and being able to take those actions and put them into practice. And just how the community came together, how they stepped up and they're like, there's a problem, it's not being addressed. We've gone through, you know, the appropriate channels, like something else has to happen in order for change to happen. And for them to take out all that garbage and dump them in their neighborhoods, you know, and like cause, you know, a visual representation of the problem. And that's amazing. But then again, they get depicted as, you know, rioters or whatever it is. But whenever you push a community to that point, it's like, what do you expect? People try to ask nicely, people try to go through the system. But when nothing happens and they get dismissed, then, you know, there has to be an action, there has to be a movement. So It was really powerful reading. I'm excited to learn more and to continue to coming here to these meetings.
Right on. Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, the link is reoccurring, and it shows the dates and times of the 3 book readings that the New Rainbow Coalition has. And last book was Ojibwe Warrior, the Dennis Banks story for the American Indian movement. This time it's the Young Lords. Prior to that, it was the Black Panthers. So like really inspirational and educational, but the time and links are right there, and it's reoccurring. And I'll try to remember to continue to invite you all. Thank you guys for joining in today.
So is it
That's
3
all.
different books at 3 different meetings, or?
Oh, no. We're focusing on 1 book per,
3
and it
meetings.
takes three
Oh,
meetings for 1 book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, it's not 3 different books at the same time. It's a book per reading, and it's going pretty well. But because some of the books are lengthy, so we try to fit them in, and or it's worked out to where we try to make them. And what is that, Sister Zen or Comrade Gabby? And within 3 months or something like that,
Yeah. Are you referring to my book club?
Oh, well, you can mention your book club too. That's a different one. We're talking about the this one with the Young Lords.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but no, you're welcome to share your link to your time and stuff like that, because it would be Wretched of the Earth is another awesome book that's being read, but that's on Tuesdays.
Yeah, it's on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want, you can message me and I could send you the link for that. If you wish to join, and if you have someone else that you would like to invite that would add on to the conversation and that also wants to participate and learn as well, you can invite them first. Just ask me first. I'm glad that they could come, Yessi, and that the other comrade could come. Eloquest, I believe that's how to pronounce your name. I'm glad you two could come, and yeah, I'm just really happy that we're reading they were reading this chapter. I was just also going to say, Sister Zen, I believe you were trying to say something.
It slipped my mind, whatever it was, but I do remember that Johnny Torres had his hand up a moment ago too. So I'd like to pass the mic to him now. Johnny, what's your thoughts on this chapter?
Oh yeah.
If you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny Torres, the poet. And
that's a good nickname.
Okay, I'll leave it as that then. So the chapter was really good. I think it was powerful how they use garbage as a weapon, because that's like when you keep confronting these people and they don't want to listen. So I'm like, okay, let's take the garbage to their house then, because they will listen then because they have to, because it's in their front of their yard, because they wanted to pick up the rich people's garbage in their area, but they forgot about the other people and on the poor side and other side of Harlem and everything. So it was a good sign of rebellion how they kept on doing it, and they were doing it low key. They didn't have their berets on, stuff like that, how they threw the cars and the other kind of appliances out there. It was good, because trust me, when all that trash is out there, like no one can get by, it bothers everybody. So the city's going to have to eventually pick it up, because it's a stand, and it's like a stench nobody wants to be around with. And it's something that everyone had to deal with. We're like, well, now they're going to have to deal with it. And it's like, it worked. So it was good. They made a stand and it worked, and they stuck by it. Um, one of my books, Voices of the Revolution anthology, one of the elders from the Young Lords named Carlito, I'm pretty sure somebody may of y'all may know who he is, but he wrote a portion about that, about his time in the Young Lords and that role he played during the whole garbage being in Harlem. So I got like a good, good side of it. So when I heard it today, it's kind of reminding me of what he said. It's just about similar, and and how they made a stand there and they didn't give up. So it was interesting how this whole thing played out. I'm just kind of waiting out how more of the chapter will go, because it's interesting where it's at and how each time the young lords do something, you get to see it right away and visualize it in your head. Kind of think like, will this kind of stuff work in our time? Could we pull this off? Most definitely. Because if it worked for them, it can definitely work for us. And that's what I kind of admire, the bravery and how they stood for it. And not just, their neighborhoods, but other neighborhoods too that were, dealing with the whole garbage thing too. So it was good how they stand up. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Agreed. I
Right
think
on.
that was quite brilliant that they were like, okay, these motherfuckers can ignore the shit so long as it's piled on empty lots in our neighborhoods and not even being visual to them, not having to see it, let alone deal with it. Let's drag this shit in the streets and make them have to deal with it too. It's fucking beautiful. Like, you can't ignore it when it's in the way of you getting through these streets to get to your jobs, driving from wealthy suburbs into the city. Here, now deal with it, and sometimes that's just how shit's got to go. Of instead of allowing the city and the system to make it the people's problem in these neighborhoods, for the people to be like, no, fuck you, we pay you for this service, it comes out of our tax dollars, etc. It's your problem, you fucking deal with it now. You clear it out of the street. We cleared it out of our lots, you clear it out of the street.
Hell yeah. Because as unfortunate as it is, revolution is the only answer. Because I believe it was the thing I'll paraphrase. I believe it was Stalin himself who said that us communists don't want war. We don't want bloodshed. But it's the only answer. It's the only thing and the only option that they're giving us. It's either I believe not Hugh Pino, I believe Fred Hampton said somewhere something along the lines of, it's either we combat fascism for survival, or we don't stand up and we face extinction. To kind of paraphrase, not directly quoting, but yeah, like, imagine there being so much garbage, so much trash in your community that is enough to pile up and block entire roads. Like, imagine that shit. Like that shit is wild. Like,
Not just any roads, New York roads.
Exactly, New York roads. And imagine having so much fucking trash, they're able to block New York roads and entire blocks. Like, imagine that shit. That shit is wild to me. That shit is inhumane and disgusting as fuck. And that's what I've been saying. Non-white communities, black communities, indigenous communities, and so on and so forth, are internalized colonies. They're siphoned of their resources. They're siphoned of their surplus value. They're made inhospitable to live, almost, which causes an increase in crime, out of a necessity to survive, which the bourgeois and the police use to do mass incarceration and benefit from the exploitation, oppression, subjugation of colonized people. They treat these communities, they treat the non-white communities, these colonized communities, as a place where they can just fucking dump their trash, and no one will care. So they had every fucking right to fight back. And I believe in the book it said how there was this ongoing question in regards to in regards to how socialism will be achieved. Will it be achieved by the masses, or will it be achieved by leadership? Something along those lines. I don't exactly remember what was being said, but I've said before, I'll say it again, societal change can only come from the collective force of the masses. That's the only way change can happen. There is no such things as liberators. There is no such thing as emancipators. The masses themselves will liberate themselves. Not a single person, not a great leader or a small group of individuals, but the people themselves will liberate themselves and emancipate themselves. And when elevated, when educated, and when they observe and participate in the revolutionary activity of the party, once they become educated, once they themselves start applying a Marxist dialectical materialist analysis on their communities, on society itself, and of the internal contradictions within society and how they relate to one another and how everything is interconnected, then they themselves will engage in class agitation. Then they will engage in organizing. Then they will self-govern and control their own communities and increase class consciousness. You have to show the masses, you have to educate the masses on how socialism and on how socialism and how the vanguard party is their party. It's not one person's party. It's not one individual. It's not one individual's party or a small group's party. It's the people's party. The masses are the vanguard. That's what makes it a vanguard party. So yeah.
Also, I see Comrade Yessie, you have your hand up. And
Sister Zen, we can barely hear you, or at least I can.
I said I see Comrade Yessie has her hand up, and after her, the mic goes to Joe. I saw Joe unmute for a minute and then remute, so I know he's got some thoughts. Go ahead, Comrade Yessie.
And then I also wanted to add that I love their demands, how they were wanting them to hire their own people, representation. And also giving a raise to people who were doing their job. So that way it's building that unity on both sides, and it's not like us versus them or anything like that. It's just holding people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I agree. Yeah, that was absolutely beautiful of them to do that, to show like, hey, no, we're working class too, and we're gonna stand with you, even if you're refusing to stand with us over this. We're gonna stand with you and show you what the fuck's up about community organizing and actually, bringing the masses of working class proletarians together. It's fucking beautiful. Comrade Joe.
Yeah, the question was gonna go out to the poet, Johnny. Were you talking about Carlos or Carlitos Rovera, or are you talking about Carlos El Lobo Camacho?
No, you were right the first time.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah, because he wrote a huge part of the anthology, and he kind of described the whole garbage situation firsthand, because he was there among other young lords, and he kind of said it like, we hit them where where it hurts, because they weren't trying to smell this garbage, so it bothered them so much, so they fixed it, because these rich areas didn't want it there, so it's good how they did that. It was a good tactic.
Most definitely. That's all I had to. That's pretty much all I had to say on that. I just wanted to make sure, because I thought that's who you were talking about. Because I've been trying to invite the young lords to come on. I've been putting it on their chat groups, and I've been sending it to Subitoro, and we've yet to have them. It would have been nice if they could be joining in on this book reading of the young lords, and have some young lords present at the reading, but we'll still keep on trying on that. That's all.
I'm not sure if you were aware, Comrade Alyssa is in the Young Lords.
Yeah, that's right. I was about to say that.
Oh, good.
We have one member.
We have one, and thank you, Comrade Alyssa, for being here. I was hoping we could get more young lords, and especially some of the elders, to share in this history And I know on some of the other book readings that we were able to bring in people that were actually there and remember those days and those times, and they can share, you know, other personal experiences about what they went through. So, but that's all I had to say.
I will definitely continue sharing that message as well. Believe me, it's not without trying.
Right on, comrade. I know all we could do is try, and it's not easy, but if we keep on, you know, poking the stick in the fire, we'll stir up the embers and we'll get that fire going again. That's what we all have to do for each other. Thank you.
Floor is open if anybody else has any thoughts.
Man, this chapter was just beautiful. I really loved it. Because yeah, you know, like you know, like like not only were they cleaning up the garbage within their own communities, but they were putting it in these wealthy sectors, these fucking these suburbs and these New York roads to not only to clean out their own communities, not only to to be like, hey, fuck you for fucking sending this trash to our community as if it was just some fucking dumpster they could toss on the side of the road. But they also just made it clear just how much of this was a problem. You know, they really, regardless of who reacted in a revolutionary way or in a reactionary way, they exemplified how much garbage wasn't within these non-white colonized communities to everyone who was on those streets, you know, like shit. If I saw that, if I was driving to my work and I fucking saw that shit, I would have been flabbergasted at just how much fucking garbage there was in these communities. It's truly fucking sickening as fuck, and that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm talking about right there. Redlining, fucking defunding non-white communities, taking away their resources, taking away their surplus value, getting rid of jobs in those communities to intentionally increase poverty, maximizing profits by making the quality of living that much expensive and that much unbearable within these communities, just to cause more crime, just cause more theft, to engage in mass incarceration. That shit right there, that shit is fucking disgusting and abhorrent as fuck. That's literally just neo-slavery. It's fucking abhorrent and disgusting as fuck. And yeah, it's just they had every single right to defend their communities and to be militant about it. So yeah.
Right. So honestly, it seems to me to be a factor of like gentrification there, that they were dealing with systemic racism to the point that it was destroying their community, when like all the people who lived there were crammed into only about 60% of the available area for housing, that what was being left run down and neglected by the city. And it's really fucked. It was honestly probably a ploy to try to push people out of the neighborhood so that they could further gentrify it.
I have a question.
Well, can you hold
sorry.
that thought for a moment though? Because Joe threw his hand up a moment ago and I want him to get a chance to take his turn too.
Of course.
Go ahead, Comrade
Yeah,
Joe.
I'll be brief. One of the most powerful things is that picture of I'm not sure if it was the Young Lords, but just the community itself overturning that car, right? Yeah. Showing that if we work together, what we can possibly do together, right? So I don't know, Sister Zen, if you could screenshot that and send it to me. I wouldn't mind sharing that out there, because that was a powerful picture right there. And that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I'll pull the book up later on my phone and screenshot that for you.
Thank you, because like I said, what we could do if we work together. That was amazing. That picture has 1,000 words in it itself. That's all.
Absolutely. Comrade Gabby?
Oops, sorry, I was muted. I was going to ask, what exactly just does gentrification mean again? Because I've been wondering, because I sometimes forget the meaning of words, so I just wanted to know what it meant in that context.
Gentrification is an amalgam of actions taken to basically push people out of an area. And it consists of things like limiting resources for things such as garbage or for education, etc. All the public services that your tax dollars pay for. It includes things like intentionally letting houses go abandoned and run down in order to drag down the property value in the area, because that leaves it open for, like corporations to come in and buy up property and build rental housing there for them to profiteer from. And they always try to push for, wealthier people from the suburbs to come in and take those rentals, because it drives up the cost of housing artificially and makes it more unaffordable for that area's actual residents, long-term residents, to be able to afford to stay there, especially if they are in a rental. If you do own your property, then they try to come at you with, offers to buy your property in order to turn it into rentals. It's exploitation on every level and in every facet you can possibly think of, in order to drive typically people of color out of their neighborhoods. Yep. So that they can seize that property and hijack the fucking prices on it and make it where only wealthy people can afford to live there anymore.
Yep. Makes sense. I had an idea of what it was, but I just wanted to be completely sure,
Yeah.
And obviously, driving those people out of their homes by artificially making it more expensive to fucking live there, by letting these buildings be run down, untended to, and then replaced by these fucking rentals that only rich petty bourgeois shitheads can buy, which then leads to these people becoming homeless, which leads to them coming to crime out of necessity to survive, and leads to them becoming arrested and thrown into prison. So yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what I grew up watching. So I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, and with the big three of the auto industry yanking almost all, if not all, of their shops and all of that. The only one I can think of that still has anything left in the area is GM, but Buick pulled out entirely, Ford pulled out entirely, and GM pulled out most of its shit. That left a huge gap there of, tons of people left without work who had for decades had, very reliable work that paid living wages, where most of the people in Flint owned their own homes. They had good income, high quality life. They were able to, take their families on vacations, afford to send their kids to college, have nice cars, etc. To having nothing when those three major auto industry companies pulled most of their operations out. And so it left this massive gap of like, okay, where the fuck are we going to find work now? And that combined with white flight to the suburbs, where like there was abandoned house after abandoned house after abandoned house. They ended up getting left, to deteriorate and drive down people's property values. So, they're losing equity at that point, those who did own their own homes, or, ending up losing more equity because the areas around their home that used to be nice neighborhoods now are full of abandos that are burnt out and crumbling the whole fucking 9 yards. It completely destabilized the community. And so that led to an increase in quote unquote crime because, people are left with no other means to support themselves except turning to things like selling drugs or other forms of hustles because there is no fucking work, when the only shit left in town that's hiring is like Taco Bell and shit. I'm sorry, you can't support a family on that these days. It ain't fucking happening. So, it made for that being absolutely solidified as part of that chain of pushing people straight into imprisonment. And it got coupled with our schools not having proper funding because there was no tax basis for the funding because everybody's losing their jobs and losing their homes, can't afford to pay the back taxes, and those houses that owed back taxes, got seized and left to rot under the city's quote unquote care. And it's one of those domino effect things that completely destabilizes the community, and it all stems from systemic racism. Comrade Joe, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't know you were lived in Flint, Michigan, because I've watched a couple of documentaries about there, and it's literally now like a ghost town. What's once an aspiring town of working class peoples is became a whole like a meth city with nothing but abandoned houses and like I don't know what the percentage is of people that still live there, but it's like a ghost town now. That's so crazy. I didn't know you came from there. That's all I had to say.
Yep, that's where I was born and raised, and it's really sad because there is still a lot of neighborhoods where like you'll have some nice houses, people who've lived there a long time who keep their stuff up, and they're sprinkled amidst abandos that, sure, if you want to take the time and the labor and the money to fix them up, you could buy them for pretty cheap from the land bank, but that's a huge undertaking. There's some of them that are not even fixable. You'd have to just demolish them and rebuild there because they've sat vacant for so long. There's some parts of downtown that are getting a facelift, but it's all from investors from the suburbs who are wealthy as fuck, and they're coming in and buying buildings downtown by the University of Michigan campus and remodeling them so fucking extravagantly that, like say the last house that I had on the east side of Flint, I was paying $550 a month in rent for, and it was like a 13 or 1400 square foot house. That's fucking unheard of now, and that was not very long ago. That was like a decade ago. And now, in order to even get one of these little fucking flats that's been remodeled a few blocks away downtown, you're going to spend a couple $1,000s a month to rent that. So it's literally fucking impossible for anybody who is actually a normal Flint City resident to afford to live there. All of these little, apartments that have been remodeled all bougie and shit, the only people who can afford them is wealthy people from the suburbs. So, sometimes they'll rent them out like for their kids that are going to college there. But, if the students are left to have to pay for it themselves, then we're talking them piling, 3 to 5 students in each one of these tiny ass apartments. And hey, here's your corner, there's your corner. Because, they're not even like 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. They are flats. It is studio apartments going for thousands of dollars a month. And I mean, we've been screaming about the gentrification for years of like, this is ridiculous. You're making it impossible for the city's actual residents to afford to still live here. So it's frustrating. And I know that's been the case in many major cities around the country.
Exactly. I seen it definitely in Denver, Colorado. It's really, really bad over there. And then I've also seen it in Los Angeles. I know one of our comrade Brown Beret brothers in Las Vegas, New Mexico, is trying to fight off regentrification for whatchamacallit, because they want to make it like a tourist town and it's an old community. And they're just bringing investors in left and right. And those investors are just colonizers like we know. And it's not, it's not bad. It's bad for the community. It's bad for the residents there, but that's happening in a lot of places where they'll tear down even a home built in the 1800s to build high-rise condominiums and then sell them and for like $2 million each. So that one property, which was a house that they probably got because they were elderly people. Sometimes if they get older and they can't maintain their yard and stuff, the city will give them fines and whatnot, and then it accumulates, and then before you know it, they lost their house. Like you said, they'll let like 2 or 3 houses go down, and they'll take those 2 or 3 houses, and they'll build multi condominiums selling for $2 million each. And who can afford that? I mean, I obviously can't. So that's a serious problem going on. That's all.
It's huge. It pushes out the people who've lived there for a long time. When it's like, okay, we're just going to keep artificially driving up the cost of housing here for no fucking reason, trying to, draw wealthy people back in from the suburbs, and it sucks. I will give credit where credit is due, that at least in the last 15, 20 years, Flint has had an uprising of artists who have started to, delve into, their own thing instead of depending on outside sources for work to become independent. And so there's been some support from a lot of the businesses downtown, like, the bars and restaurants hosting for art walks and things like that, where artists can come out and play music and do painting and photography and sell their wares and stuff without having to pay any overhead for use of the space and things like that. So I'm glad that there are places like that that are trying to support the people who live there, who are having trouble affording to fucking live there. But something's got to be done about these investment groups. Like in Flint, it's the Downtown Development Authority, and I'd love to know where the fuck they chose that name from, because they're not any kind of, governmental arm or authority of any fucking thing. It's just a group of asshole investors who want to domineer over what's being built and who it's catering to, and every fucking thing that they're doing there is catering to the bourgeoisie, and it's bullshit. So I'm glad to see, my comrades back home in Flint fighting back against that and trying to reestablish actual Flint roots in the downtown area of like, no, fuck you, we're still here. We're still poor and we're still here. You ain't pushing us out, But I mean, it's a struggle. It's a huge fight because of all of these properties being snatched up by corporations. Gabby, go ahead. And then Yessie, you'll have the mic after Gabby.
No, yeah, I just wanted to mention something they said earlier. I've said before, and I'll say it again. Not a lot of people, not enough people realize just how fucking exploitative the fast food industry is when it comes to non-white communities. Because these fast food fucking industries know that that non-white communities and colonized communities due to defunding, redlining, and their resources being fucking siphoned and all the jobs being taken away and put into fucking suburbs and the wealthy parts of society, there's barely any work to go around, and these families and these communities need to feed their children. So what is the only choice they have? They go to these fast food, unhealthy, addictive fucking restaurants because that's the only sort of food they can afford. That's the only place that they can fucking buy food for their family, and the only place where they can work, especially when it comes to the poultry industry and Black communities. especially when it comes to that. It's fucking disgusting as hell, especially with the whole fucking stereotype that all black people like chicken, quote unquote. Like, no, Kyle. The reason why there are so many KFCs in black communities isn't fucking because all black people like chicken. You racist fuck. like God.
Just a matter of exploitation.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, especially not sure if y'all know, but the whole that whole stereotype of all black people like chicken. The whole reason where that stereotype even came from in the first place was because back then chicken was and still is today, but for a lot of black communities, I believe during the after the Civil War, I believe chicken was cheap, very affordable, and it was easy food to come by. But then the birth of a nation came. And if y'all don't know, that fucking movie is racist as fuck. And towards the end of the movie, it depicts a bunch of actors in blackface, of course, eating chicken, and it depicts America being destroyed and burned down to the ground because black people were given the right to vote, and they were all eating chickens, and that's where the whole connotation came from, where all black people like chicken. So yeah,
That
it's fucking
movie
disgusting
was-
as fuck.
That movie was fucking horrendous. But
It was.
Back to what you're describing as far as in the community, that type of shit of a huge influx of fast food places typically goes hand in hand with them being forcibly made to be food deserts as well by closing down the grocery stores in those neighborhoods where people don't have food access, where their only fucking choices that are actually in their neighborhood and within like walking distance or a short drive if they're lucky enough to have a car is fucking fast food. That it makes it really difficult where if you don't have personal transportation to be able to get to a fucking suburb to just go get regular ass groceries. That's one of those things where at least when that shit started going down in Flint, a lot of our party stores started clearing out beer coolers and stocking food instead, going, this is fucked. We can't have the people in our neighborhood going without access to groceries. Get the fuck out of here, Comrade Yessie?
Hi, yes. On the topic of gentrification, there's a lot of that happening here in Colorado as well, especially even in like smaller towns. Not as big as Denver, but here in Greeley, the north side where I was born and grew up in, that's known as the poor side, the brown side. The east side is a little bit better. That's like if you're moving on up, but it takes a ton of work to try to get over there. And then the west side, that's like the white side, the rich people side. That's like, can't afford that unless you have 2-3 people living in the same place and they got good paying jobs. But even downtown here, there's a lot of gentrification going on, and sure, the apartments look nice and they're all promoting it for the students and everything like that, because there's a university here, but it's unaffordable. And like I still live with my mom after I moved back from California, but in California, I was paying $1,500-$1,600 for an apartment on my own, and it was causing me so much stress. I was working 2 jobs, only coming home to sleep for a couple of hours. And I was under so much stress and pressure and everything that happened over there. Like my hair was falling out. I kept getting hospitalized, like a whole bunch of stuff going down. And so if my mom hadn't come and got me, I pretty much would have died out there. And so like I tell people, she brought back a corpse, and it took a long time for me to get to the place where I am now. But even then, like I could not afford to live on my own out here. Because even like 1-bedroom apartments, small, tiny in the ghetto rooms are like $900, $900. And it's insane. We shouldn't be paying 2 weeks worth of pay for a place. Yeah. 2 weeks is a minimum, and it's insane. And like a lot of people from California are moving over here because it's more affordable, but because they can afford it, they're also hiking up the prices because they're fine paying $2,000, $2,500 for a place, $3,000 for a place, and then once they get the homes or whatever, like they'll jack up the rent. And it's just a screwed up system. It's meant to keep people poor. And then on the topic of food, like we have food deserts, you know, in the ghettos. The only access is if you find a convenience store that you can get to, that may have some produce, but most times they don't. So it's a whole system of keeping people sick. Eat shitty food, you get more health problems. Also part of environmental racism, putting toxic facilities in community and poor and communities of color, just to feed pharmaceuticals. So it's
Yep.
like a slow death. And because that's how we grew up with, or like if people are on food stamps or, you know, assistant programs and stuff, your butt goes further with crappy food than it does with healthy food. And it's like a lot of people don't realize that, and we don't get educated in that. And it's sad to see because we're killing ourselves off, but at the same time we have to pay rent, we have to pay bills, we have to stretch a dollar. What's the quote? Try to make a dollar out of 50 cents.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's insane.
You
So
know,
like I've even told my mom, like, I don't even think I'll ever have a house of my own. I don't think, you know, like what society deems us as successful, or capitalist colonial society views us as successful, like we should be having our own houses and all this stuff, debt free, yada yada yada, have a bachelor's or a master's degree and all this stuff. All of that puts you into debt, and it's impossible to get out of.
exactly.
And they'll
You
bail
know,
out the banks, but they won't bail out the student loans, you know?
yep. I remember that whole shit. I don't know if y'all remember. I mean, y'all probably do. But y'all remember how during Biden's fucking campaign, he promised he was gonna fucking forgive all student debt. I fucking remember that shit. But then when he became president, he was like, actually no, I'm only going to forgive like $1,000 or fucking whatever. Like $1,000 ain't shit. Like,
I think it was
like,
more like 10K, but that still doesn't make a fucking dent for those of us who
Yep.
have, you know, 50,000 or 100,000 in fucking student
Exactly.
loans that we can't fucking pay back when we find out that our degrees are pretty much fucking useless in this fucked economy. And it's like, oh, thanks, you paid part of the interest. Good fucking job, Joe. You know,
Like, good job,
it's
damn.
sad because all of the student loan debt could easily be fucking cleared away with a fraction of what we spend warmongering.
Yep.
But, you know, that's more important to them because they profiteer off of that. But
Yep.
like going back to what Yessie was saying, like these are all facets of capitalism that is built to keep us poor, to keep us overworked, because if you're not overworked, then you might actually have some fucking free time to stand up against the system to do something about it. It's meant to keep us absolutely fucking exhausted and working ourselves to death just to survive. That's fucking sad. That is the situation for so many people in this country, to be working themselves to fucking death just to pay for a home that they don't get to enjoy. They barely get to go home to get enough sleep to go back to work and fucking do the grind all over again. And to add to it, what you pointed out of that link between the food availability and the healthcare system, you fucking nailed it. Because that right there, when we're stuck living on garbage food and working ourselves to fucking death, that pretty much guarantees that our life expectancy is going to drop dramatically. And I'm pretty sure they would like a lot of us to die off before we ever get to fucking get paid back any of the money we've put into Social Security that they want to use as their own personal piggy bank slush fund to have fun with, that they were never supposed to be allowed to do so when, you know, Social Security was set up. It was not ever supposed to be allowed to be touched for any fucking thing else. And they have drained it to the point that by the time I reach retirement age, there might not be a fucking Social Security anymore, even though I've been paying into it since I was 15 fucking years old. It's fucking ridiculous. All of these things come together to completely fuck the masses in every way, shape, and form, and keep us struggling just to survive and not being able to actually thrive and really live a decent, dignified life.
Yup. Literally. Like,
That's all I have
like
for my for now. Go ahead, Gabby.
hell yeah. I was just gonna say no, yeah. No, no, yeah, and exactly what you were saying, Sister Zen, and exactly what you were saying, Comrade Yessie. These fucking the food, the chemicals that they put in these fast food restaurants, and some of the food that is available in your common fucking Walmart, Target, and so on and so forth, is literally banned in most fucking European countries. Like, 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 like they intentionally put these harmful, degrading chemicals into our fucking food to make it A, addictive as fuck to eat, and B, to gradually decrease our health and life expectancy, so that we can go to these clinics and these hospitals who will only fix the problem temporarily, who will only fix the problem for a small time, but not completely. So that way we have to keep on being dependent on the health industry to further maximize profit. It's fucking disgusting as hell. They only heal you enough so that way you have to go back to your work and do your miserable job, but never enough to actually fix the problem completely, or at least for most of the part. They only help you just enough so where so that the pain doesn't come back immediately, so that way you can go back to your job for about a month before the pain comes back, and you have to go back to the hospital. You have to give a shit ton of money for them, just so that way they can fix the problem temporarily before it comes back again. It's a fucking vicious cycle of go to work, go back home, get sick, go to the hospital, get temporarily checked up, and heal, go back to work, and so on and so forth. It's fucking disgusting and abhorrent as fuck.
That's why most of the healthcare system is directed at treating symptoms, not actually curing any fucking thing.
Exactly.
Because if all they're doing is treating your symptoms, you're going to be a repeat customer. If they cure you, you're fucking cured. You're not going to be a return customer for that issue anyway.
Exactly. Like most of these medications are mostly for symptoms. You'll rarely ever see a medication prescribed to you that is about like actually treating like the actual fucking core. I mean hell, even the fucking even the name ADHD is really just describing the symptoms of it. It doesn't even describe the actual fucking disorder, and so on and so forth.
Right. And yeah, as Elwes just said in the chat, no profit from a cure. That's right.
Yep, exactly.
In order to sustain their profit margins, they've got to keep you as a returning customer. Can't fucking cure you. Joe, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. With all the stuff they put in that processed food, I seen this one thing, and it showed a French fry that fell between the seats and was under a car for a year. It still looked like a French fry. I was like, after a whole year, you know what I mean? I was like, wow, what are they really putting in that stuff? You know what I mean? So
preservatives.
we are what we eat,
Fucking
right?
plastic.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But that, you know, and then I was talking to a comrade, David Hill, today, who was actually he's a part of AIM from back in the Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Leonard Peltier days, and he was telling me so much today, like the way things are going, and the way things are happening now, that I, I don't know. I would like to get him on one of our meetings and stuff like that. He's got a lot to say, but he lives in Oklahoma and the reception's kind of sucks over there. But there and New Mexico, I've always had troubles in those areas with the phone service. But that's all I wanted to say. Like we are what we eat, and you're right about that. And I think of you were mentioning about chicken. I kind of like go back to that to today's times.
Poultry. Yeah.
Poultry. What with the price of eggs nowadays? Like every family should have their own chickens, and I think even us in Texas back in the days, chickens produce real fast and stuff. So that it is a form of eggs, and then once the chicken grows, some type of poultry. So I don't think chickens were just, or even watermelons for that fact. Those two type of things that was just a black thing. I think I don't think I know a lot of us Chicanos and Tejanos in Texas lived off the same stuff. And going back to self-sustainability, we have to produce our own gardens. We have. I mean, if you have the place and means for a chicken coop, well, get a chicken coop. Not everybody has, the place or the means for it. But and a lot of cities don't even allow it. But go on and buy a dozen of eggs, and I think they're like $5 now right here. That's crazy. That's unheard of. They used to be 69 cents. I remember. That's all I had to say.
To add on to what you were saying about the fake food, I've seen that happen myself too. I don't eat McDonald's because that shit ain't real food. But my ex's son had a love for McChickens. And one time we took him through the drive-through, got him a couple of McChickens, and one of them ended up landing on the floor of my car and rolling under the seat, and I didn't know it. I found it many months later. And I'm like deep cleaning my car and pull this fucking McChicken out from under my seat. And other than the one bite the kid took out of it, it looked exactly the same as when it came out the drive-through window. And I snapped a picture of it and sent it to him like, excuse me, this is why I've been telling you, stop letting your kid eat this shit, because this is not real food. If this was real food, other life forms would be eating it. There would be mold growing on it. But guess what? There's no mold growing on it. And if other life forms aren't going to eat it, neither the fuck should you. This is not real food. This is filler, garbage, and fucking preservatives. It's trash. This is not meeting any kind of nutritional value. And that's the kind of shit that people are stuck having to eat amidst food deserts. You can't find a grocery store, but you can find a motherfucking McDonald's. Fuck out of here.
Yep. In modern days, when we think of addictions, we oftentimes think of, like drugs. But modern day addictions aren't just limited to drugs. It's fucking McDonald's, KFC, fucking Burger King, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Fanta, and so on and so forth. These unhealthy ass fucking products that are literally banned in most other fucking countries in the world, that we are forced to fucking eat out of a necessity to survive. They are literally addiction. They are literally fucking addicting as fuck. Like the same way these fucking food deserts that are especially rampant in fucking non-white communities, the same way how colonizers got indigenous people addicted to fucking to alcohol to further divide and conquer their communities, they're doing the exact same fucking things, but instead of just alcohol, they're fucking doing it with McDonald's, with Burger King, these fucking unhealthy ass foods that cause obesity, mass obesity, and that further divide communities and keep them fucking unhealthy as fuck. Like, it's disgusting as hell. And yeah, no. I remember I was working for context. I was working at a McDonald's before, right? And I was the fry cooker, there, right? I was flipping the patties, well, when I was actually flipping the patties, I fucking it was kind of like a pressurized fucking stove where like I pressed the button and it closed them and squished them and cooked them almost immediately. But sometimes they failed. And this one time I put a patty, I put a frozen patty on the fucking on the stove. I pressed it. On the front side, it was completely cooked, but on the other side, it was somehow still fucking raw as fuck. So I was like, ew, I'm gonna throw this shit away. But then one of the people came and they're like, oh no, put it on the burger. And I was like, but it's uncooked. And they were like, but that doesn't matter. And that shit was just fucking wild to me, like holy fucking shit. And I did as they say. I put it in the fucking burger, and I saw the person who gave it to the customer, and the guy just fucking ate it, without even fucking checking the burger itself, and that shit just fucking made me sad as fuck. So yeah.
Yep, it's really super fucking disgusting, the shit that they call food anymore. And it's like, that's not food.
Yep.
I see Brother West talking about Taco Bell and stuff.
Yep. Fucking
Brother
fake Mexican
West,
food.
would you like to share your input on the whole Taco Bell experience there?
Oh hell yeah. Because Taco Bell ain't no fucking food. It definitely isn't any genuine Mexican food for that matter.
No, it's garbage. It's like Burger King, Taco Bell. It's not food. It'll make you sick.
Yep.
It's just nasty. Like,
sorry.
No, go ahead. It's just crap for food. Like some of these other fast food places, we live in this fast food cheeseburger society that food is crap for us. It's not healthy.
I was just going to ask. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to ask. Hasn't Taco Bell really started fucking selling chicken wings in a supposed Mexican restaurant? Like that's just fucking hilarious to me.
I have no clue.
I'm pretty sure they have. Here, let me fucking search it up. Has Taco Bell started selling chicken? Yep. After a successful test in August 2020, crispy chicken wings first appeared on Taco Bell's nationwide menu for a limited time on January 2022. Like they're literally started selling fucking chicken now in a supposed quote unquote Mexican fast food restaurant. Like, god fucking damn.
No, they're just trying to find some other niche to fill and get more customers flocking to their fucking drive-through.
Yep.
And it kind of it makes me laugh thinking about a meme I saw a few months ago, making fun of the idea that capitalism drives innovation, and the entire meme was photos of like the same fucking chicken sandwich from like 40 different fast food lines, and it's like, yeah, that's really innovative.
Yeah. I've said before. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so years ago, I was actually in a Taco Bell, and it is the one and only time I've actually seen a placard on the wall, which actually detailed what is in their meat seasoning. And I'm going to post it here in the chat right here. It's 88% beef, 12% seasonings, spices, water, and other ingredients, which I assume includes preservatives and stuff. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, I'd love to know what those quote other ingredients are. I mean, yeah, definitely some preservatives in there, but what other chemical fucking garbage have they packed into that shit?
I remember when I was a kid, I'm kind of remembering back, and I'm kind of surprised at how many fucking things got through my education in Florida that I know for a fact today would have never been fucking taught because of Ron DeSantis' fucking disgusting fucking fascist killing off education. But I really remember our teacher showing us a documentary about how this lady, how this news reporter or whatever went into a McDonald's. And back in the day, in the early days, I mean, like in the early 2000s, McDonald's actually had a fucking a menu showing you the ingredients that were in the burger. But onwards they fucking stopped. They stopped showing that blackboard showing the ingredients, and this lady went into this McDonald's and she was like, "Hey, get rid of this blackboard that only shows the menu." And they removed it, and behind it was a blackboard that showed the ingredients of the menu. Like, wow, I sure do wonder why they wanted to fucking hide that.
Fair point. Comrade Yessi, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, there was, when I lived in California, there would be signs in restaurants saying that the food may give you cancer. And that was the first time like I've ever seen that. And I was so shocked. I was like, what the heck? And when I lived in Woodland, like they even told us don't drink the tap water. And I'm from Colorado, so I always drink out of the hose or tap water and everything. We didn't have filtered or bottled water, and you could even taste it in the water. Just like the chemicals and all the stuff, and like it didn't taste good. So that's just another system. Like, you're already paying for water to get to your house, but make it so people can't even drink that water or use it. So they have to buy and purchase water, which is insane to me, because water should be free and accessible and drinkable. But just because of these systems and exploitation and pollution, like it's all keeping us sick. It's all keeping us in the system that's feeding the capitalist society. And it's killing us. So it's just insane how your income can determine your life quality. And that's all I had to say.
That right there, when people's value is whittled down to nothing more than their adjacency to capital, you know, we're fucked. You know, that's how this system treats everybody. If you are not wealthy, then you don't hold any value to the system. The issues surrounding even what you just said of just access to clean water that should technically, you know, be a publicly owned resource that we don't have to pay a fucking water bill for, let alone deal with shit like lead in our pipes and things like that that's constantly poisoning people. You know, these things all come together, showing the system trying to just kill us all off. Go ahead, Comrade Joe.
Yeah, I wanted to bring into a light also, let us not forget the growth hormones that they inject into these beef and poultry products for them to grow and to multiply more. Those things are passed down to the consumer as well. So people wonder why they have problems with obesity and such and so forth. It's the same damn growth hormones that are already injected into the meat that the masses are consuming. And then with the water thing, my grandpa told me, oh, I don't know, I think it was back in like the late 70s or something. He goes, just wait, Joe, one day they're going to start selling water. I was like, Grandpa, how can you sell water? He goes, just believe me. And I grew up to see that, like, you know, water is a real big thing. And then I think one of the main factors in health is soda. Soda is, and I mean, everybody has their own bag and everybody enjoys doing what they do, but that soda is so bad for people. Like even in a Coke can, they said you can put a nail inside of a Coke can, and like by 2 weeks it'll be dissolved. I was like, imagine what it could do to your system. I never thought there would be a day where they would sell water, and that's a damn shame. I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
I feel ya. It's dystopian as fuck that we have to go to the store and buy bottles of water just to even have it be clean enough to consume without making us sick, you know? Comrade Gabby?
No, yeah, we live in a fuck society when our own fucking government has tricked us that water is a fucking privilege. Like that's just fucking whack to me. Like that's one of the fucking biggest scams in the fucking world. Tricking people to buy water. Like it almost sounds like a joke. It almost sounds like a fucking joke where you say like, well, like what do you mean buy water? But like no, like that's the fucking reality that we fucking live in. It's disgusting as fuck. And Comrade Joe, with what you were saying, with what you were saying, I don't know if y'all have seen this video, but there's this video where this guy puts some coke on his engine because his engine is rusted in his car. He takes some coke, he puts some coke on his engine. He leaves for a couple of minutes. He comes back and the rust is completely gone from his fucking engine because he fucking spilled coke on it. And that shit was wild to me. Like holy fucking hell. So yeah,
Imagine what that does to your insides. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know. And then we were talking a little bit earlier about consumerism and stuff. This whole fanatical coffee scene where people going to Starbucks or to Dutch Brothers or to whatever little coffee shops they have around town. The outrageous prices they're charging for a cup of coffee. I don't
Yeah.
drink coffee. I don't drink any caffeinated drinks. But I man, that's a whole craze right now. Like people, it's a new addiction for people. I see. You see the long lines. I mean, if you were an investor and if you wanted to get stock in Starbucks, probably you'd make a couple dollars, but like what at whose harm, at whose hands would you be making those couple of dollars off of? That's all I wanted to say.
No, yeah. Wait, let me just oh, I see that yes, yeah, has their hand up.
Sister Yessie, you've got the mic.
Yeah, I had watched when I was at CSU, I watched in one of my classes, we watched Maquiladoras. It's really, really good documentary about pretty much factories being put up in Juarez along the border and everything, causing mass migrations and displacing communities. But what they would do is it's a race to the bottom line. And so the factories would shut down and they wouldn't clean up the toxic waste. And in some areas, they would even release all that waste into the water at night. And where people used to like wash their clothes and bathe and all that stuff, they can't. Everything's been killed off. Everything's toxic. They're getting sick, rashes, all this crazy stuff. And they'll just leave it there. And no one wants to be responsible for the cleanup, which is the result of NAFTA. They're like, okay, we could give you jobs, we could provide income, but we're gonna lift the environmental protections and we pretty much can do whatever we want. And so then they'll go to Asia or China or wherever where they can even exploit the people even more. And it's even, what's the word? Gendered? I don't know what the word is, but they want to hire women because they could sit down for longer. They're more docile. They're easier to control and manipulate, and they have smaller hands. So that was a real eye opener to me and everything. And like, I don't know, people like think that migrants want to leave their homes for shits and giggles. Like, that's not the case. They have no other option. Like, companies will come in and like, there's an example, I believe it was in Jamaica. I'm not too positive, but they had farmers there and they had cows and they would produce the dairy for them and everything. They were all local. But then a United States company would come in and they would sell dry milk for a cheaper price. And everybody would switch over to the dry milk because it was more affordable. And then once those factories, the local farmers had to shut down because no one was buying their milk and it was all getting lost. They shut down, and then the price of the dry milk would skyrocket, double, triple. And it's just a fucked up system, a fucked up game that they're playing, just to exploit the people that are already poor and have no other options.
Sad and fucked up. Exploitation at its worst. They created artificial scarcity there with that. And completely undermines that local supply chain.
Yep, definitely.
And when it comes to like what we were talking earlier with coffee, almost every single resource that the US has is through the exploitation, oppression, and subjugation of the global South. Those beans, those coffee beans that they have to grind to get coffee powder, they come from Africa. Same thing same thing with chocolate, cacao seeds. I believe that's what they're called. They purposely they colonize, siphon the resources and surplus value of these countries, either through colonialism or neocolonialism, either through directly pointing the gun at their head through brute force, through the military, or through neocolonialism, where they force the gun of the oppressed towards their own head through food aid, through creating a comprador class to confuse, misdirect and manipulate the masses to make them think that they live in a democracy, when in actuality they're not. When their economic is when their economy and their social relations are all dependent on an imperialist country, and so on and so forth, and they're forced to give their surplus value, their resources, to pay off this debt that they've accumulated from these imperialist countries through the IMF and so on and so forth, and it's disgusting as fuck. So yeah, and Comrade Desia, the word is gentrification.
Yeah, those IMF loans are one of the ways that the West completely fucks areas that they've colonized and raped of resources.
Yep. As well as
keeps them in debt, having to pay the colonizers for having colonized them and fucked their resources.
Yep. I believe that's what Britain did with, it was either Haiti or Jamaica. I'm pretty sure it was Haiti, I believe. Yeah, both the IMF and the BRI, Bridge and Road Initiative, through Chinese social imperialism and so on and so forth. It's fucking disgusting. As all living fuck, these imperialist countries trying to exploit, subjugate, oppress, and siphon the resources and the people of these countries through tricking them that they have a democracy. It's fucking disgusting. If I remember correctly, there's that whole thing in West Africa, with Russia, with Russia trying to colonize and trying to make countries in Western Africa neo-colonies, and so on and so forth, as well as China making countries in the global South and Asia neo-colonies like Laos and Vietnam and so on and so forth. It's fucking disgusting as hell.
I just looked at the clock and we are over 2 hours on this recording, so we should probably wrap things up here.
Right.
Does anybody else have any final thoughts to wrap things up here?
No, it's been a great discussion. I don't have anything else to say. I had to change phones, or my notebook died, so I switched over to my phone. But I wanted to thank Sister Yesenia and Brother Ramon El Juez for joining in on their first time today. And thanks for Sean coming back and stuff like that. I really appreciate that. Now we can just get some more active minds working together. It would be really, really nice. But great reading today and great discussions. And anybody else have anything else to say? That's all I had to say.
I just want to say that I'm glad. I mean, right now we only have 6 people in here, but when the class started, we had 8 people. We almost had 10 people. So that's a win in my book. But yeah, it would definitely be awesome if we could get more comrades, especially more new era young lord comrades in this reading group to give more insights to the young lords, their formation, their organizational structures, and their successes and mistakes, especially their mistakes, so we can learn not to make the same mistake and how to move class struggle forward and better implement our theory, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and Pantherism within our materialistic conditions through praxis. So hopefully we can get more new era young lord comrades on here.
That would be beautiful. And yeah, I'll reiterate Joe's thanks to Yessie and LOS for joining us today. It's fucking awesome. Thank you, Joe, for continually inviting new people to take part in this. It's beautiful to get to meet new comrades and be able to expand, on these discussions and stuff. It's fucking dope.
You're welcome, and I'll keep on trying because I want to get more AIM involved also. So I've been working on that, but it's hard to work on certain things because not everybody has the time, especially on Friday nights. I think I'll probably have more luck on Sundays inviting people's because they have the day off and stuff like that. But we're all in different time zones. People are coming home from work, going home, cooking dinner or whatever, so forth with all that. But yeah, let's just keep on trying. That's all we can do. I just barely started the last few meetings, but I'll continue starting to invite previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been an awesome reading and discussion. And we will see you back here Sunday at, I believe that one is 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific. And then next week, Monday is at 5 p.m. Pacific, so 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Tuesday will be the UPM book club, excuse me, reading The Wretched of the Earth. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And then, same time next Friday. I'm getting redundant at this point, but all power. Thank you guys for coming.
All power to the people.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Sister Zen, if you want, we